Several years ago, some parishioners at a parish that I served planned a surprise birthday party for me. I think it was on my 50th, which was 20 years ago. But they invited about 50 people to their home, and as a lure to get me to their home, they invited me over for dinner. And the party must have been well planned because I knew nothing about it. Not only was I surprised when I walked into their home and was greeted by this group of people, but I was even more surprised when I saw all of these people holding a blown-up picture of my face stapled to a popsicle stick in front of their faces. It was a big surprise. You know, even though that party was 20 years ago, I thought of it and the element of surprise when I was reflecting on the readings for today. Jonah, in our first reading, must have been surprised when God called on him to go to the town of Nineveh to preach repentance. And taken by surprise, what does Jonah do? Jonah tries to avoid God's call because Jonah knew that many of the prophets of his day were persecuted and even killed for speaking about God. But Jonah eventually goes to the Nineveh people, and surprisingly, they embrace his message. Then St. Paul, in his letter to the Corinthian people in the second reading, writes a message of urgency. He was trying to convey to the people of Corinth, who were about somewhat corrupt and more interested in material possessions and power than anything else, that the second coming of Christ was imminent. And that message and St. Paul's insistence to detach themselves from all worldly possessions took the Corinthian people totally by surprise. And then in our gospel, I wonder how surprised Peter and Andrew and James and John were when in their boats minding their own business and getting their nets ready for another day's work, Jesus calls to them. He chooses them to be his disciples. Jesus must have certainly surprised them with his unexpected call. But even with this element of surprise, these four fishermen dropped what they were doing, left everything they had, and followed Jesus. Ever think about how many times, how often God might surprise us and calls on us to do something unexpectedly? I had a high school classmate who in biology class absolutely refused to dissect a frog. Today, he's a surgeon out east. What a surprise that was to find that out. I think of stories about young people who are always in trouble with the law, and end up becoming police officers. I'm currently working with a 97-year-old man who approached me a while back and said he was interested in joining the Catholic Church. Talk about a surprise. Probably for him, but more so for me. Even when I think of my own vocation to the priesthood, it surprised me to give up a job managing a major hotel that I really enjoy doing to enter the seminary and eventually be ordained. If someone would have told me 50 years ago that I would be standing in front of you this morning as a priest, I probably would have told them they're out of their mind. There are definitely times when we are surprised, caught off guard by God's call, and we respond sometimes surprisingly to those unexpected calls. Perhaps those unexpected calls may be to take care of an elderly parent or relative or friend. Maybe God calls on us to be supportive to another who lost their job, or lost a loved one to death, or recently went through a divorce. Maybe God is calling us to simply pick up our cell phones, or jot a note, or spend some time with somebody who might be all alone or depressed. Maybe God is calling on us to be a part of the faith-sharing groups here at St. Denis during Lent. Maybe God calls on us to make some significant faith decisions or choices. Life is full of surprises. I suspect all of us here this morning can probably identify a time in which God has surprised us and has called on us to respond to a particular need or situation, and will continue to call on us. And those times, those challenges, those surprising calls from God will never be more than we can handle. And so maybe as we go about this coming week, let's really try to pay close attention to how God is calling us, how God is calling you. What is God asking of you? What is God asking of us? That call, that challenge may come as a big surprise.